Hello everyone, this is Muhammad Tuhami from Midway Simplicity and welcome to a new episode of the Midway Simplicity Show where I invite simple living advocates to share with you a few tips that are not too harsh for your lifestyle and that can help you simplify the 5 most important aspects of your life, which are time, health, things, finances and relationships. And today I have a very special guest. She is Jenny McCutcheon from xconsumer.com, where she helps people achieve more freedom in their lives, freedom of time, money, and attention. So, welcome, Jenny.
Thank you so much, Mohammed.
The title of your
I'm happy
blog
to be
is
here.
You are most welcome. So, the title of your blog is very interesting, Ex-Consumer. It seems to hold a story, an interesting story. If you have something to share, I believe you have a nice story getting rid of debt and saving money and all these things. Can you share with us a little bit about your blog and the story behind it?
Okay, well, the title of my blog, it was actually my husband that came up with the title, which he always loves to tell people. And it does tell a story because I think I was very much a brainwashed consumer, so to speak, up until about maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I went through some sort of transformation when I started studying marketing and advertising in college, actually. And once I became more aware of all the influences that we're exposed to and that shape our viewpoints and our perspectives and our purchasing habits, I started to change my ways.
That's great. So let's start with a tip to help people simplify their time.
Okay, well, I guess my biggest tip for simplifying time that works for me is I have stopped multitasking. Multitasking is not an efficient way to get things done. It's a lie. If you are multitasking, then you're not putting 100% into whatever you're working on. So for me, if I work on one thing at a time, then I produce a higher quality product, and I also spend less time overall working on it because I'm not trying to spread myself too thin.
Yeah, but how can you control the distractions that try to capture your attention?
Um, well, you can shut them off. I'm sure you just heard my email ding. I just realized I forgot to shut that off, so I wasn't practicing what I preach. But when I'm working on something, I try to
Yeah.
shut down other things that might be biting for my attention.
Yeah.
And whether that's my email dinging at me or social networks popping up saying that there's new messages, if I can't see it, then I'm not going to pay attention to it right then.
Awesome. So let's move to health. So how an
Okay.
ex-consumer uh, see the topic of health, and what's the relation maybe between consuming stuff that might be uh, harmful for our health. So
Well, I think there's a huge connection between consuming unhealthy processed foods and our health overall. And you don't see a lot of healthy foods promoted because they typically don't have the advertising budget that the processed food companies have. So I guess my biggest advice there is just to try to eat local and organic foods that are in season whenever possible, and shop the perimeter of the grocery store if you do shop at a grocery store so that you can avoid a lot of that processed garbage in the middle of the store.
yeah, yeah, this is a well-known advice, but how do you make your raw food tasty like and delicious like the processed food? Do you have some secret tips that you can share with us from your own
Well, if
experience?
the food is fresh and it's in season, then it tastes so much more delicious than processed food, anyways, I think. And the problem is when you're trying to buy food that's out of season, that usually means that it's either been frozen or it's been shipped a long way. It wasn't picked during the peak time that it's supposed to be harvested, so it lacks a lot of flavor. So if you have farmers markets, those are usually really good sources of fresh in-season food, and the flavor is going to be so much better than anything you can get if you're shopping for out-of-season food at the grocery store. And of course, the processed foods usually have additives that are very unhealthy that are giving them this wonderful flavor, but it's usually things like MSG and sodium and sugar. So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, there's
yeah. So let's move to things. How can we organize, declutter, and get rid of stuff that we don't use?
Well, that one, I think when you're starting out can be really overwhelming. So, the biggest tip that I have for that is to start small. Just pick one small area that really bothers you. For me, that was we have a little counter in the middle of our kitchen, and it was the junk collector. And every single time that I would walk into that kitchen, I just felt really stressed out and overwhelmed because of this pile of mail and schoolwork and what my purse, whatever else just landed on this counter. So the first thing I did was try to just keep that space clear. And that in itself was such a huge success. It made me feel so much better that I started looking at other areas. I started saying, okay, well, if this feels so great, what about this cupboard with all of these things I never use in it? What if I take some of those out? And I just eventually moved around to every area, and I still have more to do after spending an entire year clearing things out, but just starting in one small space and then moving around into other small spaces, all of a sudden you have this open, clear space that feels so much better.
Well, that's interesting. So let's move to the area that you are the guru of, which is finances. I think you have a lot to
I don't
share
know.
with us in this area.
I enjoy that area though.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you have to share with us in simplifying finances?
Well, for us, the biggest thing was eliminating debt and preventing any new debts from incurring, and really just getting our head around the idea that debt is not something that you need to carry. Um, Before I started down this path, I would have never dreamt of purchasing a car without going and getting a car loan. And I would have, if I needed new furniture, I would have just financed it. I didn't really think about spending future income for what I wanted today. And today, we would never purchase anything unless we have the money for it up front. And not having any debts means that we don't need as much income every month, and we're able to take on jobs that we like. And I just recently left a full-time job to pursue freelance work because it doesn't matter if I have less income one month than I do another month now.
That's very interesting. You have a book that's called Wake Up, I believe, that talks about the
Mhm.
influences of advertising. So can you give us a
Yes,
hint about that and how advertising can crush our financial stability and
it
independence?
it can. It does
Yeah,
crush our financial stability because it convinces us
yeah,
that everybody lives a type of lifestyle that they aren't really living. I mean, the people that are on TV are living an inflated lifestyle that is not realistic for the average person. And when we're constantly bombarded with images of lifestyle inflation, and then we're receiving all these messages that are convincing us to desire products, we start to believe it, even though we might not realize that we're buying into it, but we do, because when you're exposed to something so much, it does affect your psyche and how you perceive the world. And once we start forgetting that maybe it's not the right way to live by purchasing with our future income and purchasing things that we don't need, that we think are going to make us feel a certain way, and then end up not making us feel the way that we hope they would, we end up trapped. We end up underwater, we're in debt, we have to stay in jobs we don't like, we're working long hours to pay for stuff we already bought that we might not even want anymore. And it really is a vicious cycle that keeps us stuck and trapped.
yeah, yeah. That's very true. That's very true. So let's move to the final area, which is relationships. How can we simplify our relationships?
Well, I guess I see relationships as I do every other part of my life. I value quality over quantity. I prefer to keep a closer group of friends and relationships that are closer and more intimate rather than a lot of shallow relationships that are hard to keep track of. And for me, that's important, just having some close people that I can really count on and that I really connect with.
Yeah, so a close, intimate circle of people is much, much better than Facebook friends. Half of them,
Yes.
or more than half, that you don't know or even talk with before. So that's very interesting, Jenny, and very interesting tips as well. So before we end the call, tell us a little bit about the work you do at X Consumer, the type of articles that you write, and the work you are doing in general in that blog.
Okay. Well, at X Consumer, I write about a combination of minimalism and personal finance because not everybody agrees, but for me, those are one and the same. So I write about how by controlling your personal finances and paring down your life and your lifestyle, you can pretty much have anything you want.
Yeah, yeah, you are right. That's great. Thank you very much, Jenny, for being with me on the call today, and I hope to have you again one more time.
Thank you.
And maybe next
Yeah,
time
that
we
was
can talk
great.
in depth in things related to finances and getting rid of debt as well.
That sounds wonderful.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you
Thank you
so
very
much.
much. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.